Hello everyone, I'm TG and I'm here to talk to you about the awesome multiplayer experience that is Evil Dead the Game. Today I want to show you guys my bar none favorite way to play any demon in the game. It is the Power Possessed Puppeteer, and this one is something special. It's gonna win you guys matches. Now a lot of people are saying that the Puppeteer is the worst demon in the game. That's not true. He's the worst at basic unit possession. He's the worst at playing like a warlord. But if you learn the intricacies of how the Puppeteer works, he actually is quite viable. I'm not going to say he's the strongest because all three demons have their strengths, their weaknesses, but in my opinion, Puppeteer is definitely the most fun to play because it requires the most thinking. And that being said, Puppeteer is the demon that I have the highest win ratio with. So what I'm going to do today is show you guys the build, tell you why I spend my points the way I spend my points, crunch a few numbers for you, show you examples in game, and then I also want to do something special for you guys and show you a few strategies to really make this build work. Now, on its face value, what this build really is power possessing your elites. And why I think that really works as the Puppeteer is because their elites are so unique. None of the other demons have elites that function this way. Number one, you can clone them. Number two, they do huge AoE. And number three, most importantly, they're almost completely immune to gunfire, which means hunters, who are typically the biggest thorn in the side of any demon, are almost not even an issue. So without further ado, let's dive right in. So to start things off with, you might notice that this build is a lot more concise whenever you look at the tech tree than a lot of the other demon builds that you'll see. Now, what that means is you can hyper focus on one thing. However, you do have to keep in mind you are going to be weak in other areas. So our first 3 points are going to go into Shock and Awe, and that is going to increase the range of the Thunderstruck ability by 15%. Now that may not seem like a lot, but trust me, that is a big deal, and we'll talk about why later. Next, I'm putting a single point into Tenacious Demon Dash, and that's just going to reduce the cooldown for Demon Dash to 110 seconds. And I'm just using that so we can get deeper into the tree because there's some really important stuff, like Insane Clone Posse. 3 points in this is going to increase the damage of your clones by 15%. Now, very important to mention, clones, outrageously stupid. They're almost never going to do what you want them to do, and what you want them to do is Thunderstruck, but when they do, oh my, do they do a lot of damage, because we're going to be buffing our Thunderstruck radius, as you've already seen, but we're also going to be buffing its damage. So whenever you do have this army of clones, which you will have if you're playing this build correctly, you're going to see some big damage. Not only that, one thing a lot of people don't understand about clones is if you possess a clone, it becomes an elite. Its health, its damage, all that, it gets scaled up to as if it were a regular elite. So do not count these guys out. Moving on, I'm putting 2 points into Health Razor Elite. That's just going to increase the health of all the elite units by 15%. But next, we want 3 points into Scared to Death. And this is where things get interesting, because this is going to cause evil units to increase the survivor's fear by 2 every time they hit a survivor. Now, 2 fear per hit doesn't seem like a big deal, but it kind of is, because whenever you're power possessing, which you often will be doing with this build, you are actually stacking on top of the power possessor's ability to already cause fear on hit. So you're basically getting double that ability, and you have the added benefit of any basics or elites or clones that are just running around the map. Anytime they hit a survivor, they're generating fear on them as well. And you can actually generate a shocking amount of fear. Definitely more than you would think. In fact, it's enough that you don't really need to invest any points in the bottom of the tree there that would increase fear against survivors. Moving on, I'm also putting 3 points into High Voltage, and that's going to increase the damage inflicted by the Thunderstruck ability by 10%. Again, that might not seem like a lot, but there's going to be a lot of other things that go into this that actually make that boost very worth it. Moving on, we're putting a point into Scarier Demonic Dash, which increases the amount of fear that survivors receive from the Demonic Dash by 50. But what we really want is 3 points into Gates of Hell Elite. Now that's going to reduce the cooldown period between placing your elite portals by 15%. And again, 15% doesn't really seem like a lot, but you'll see later on in the video why it's important, because the last thing you want to do is be in a position where you're just waiting and you can't put down any portals. And just with the nature of how this build works, that's not going to be so much of an issue if you do use these points to reduce the cooldown. Moving on to 3 points into Rocksteady Elite. That's going to increase the balance bar length of your elite units by 15%. Now, the elite units, their biggest weakness is melee, so that extra 15% is really going to help you if you're going against a 2 or 3 stack of just melee characters in your face. You're really going to need all the balance you can take. Next is my personal favorite ability in any tech tree. It's Prison Rules. This causes Elagos's melee attacks to inflict a 5% stacking bleed every time he attacks a survivor. Now, I'll talk more about Elagos later on in the video, but rest assured he is a pretty important part of this build. Not the most important by any means, but you definitely do want to have him as strong as you possibly can while not sacrificing from your elites. And after that, I'm putting 3 points into heavy damage elites, and what that does is increase the damage dealt by your elite units by 10%. Now don't forget, anytime you increase the damage of your elites, you are de facto also increasing the damage of your clones because they do an identical amount of damage. In fact, your clones are actually going to do more damage than a regular elite unless you are power possessing that elite, because we put those 3 points into clone damage. Now next is 1 pesky point into Power Surge. It increases the range of Elagos' telekinetic surge by 10%. Not the worst thing, but I really don't want it. I've tried every variation of, tweaking the build so I don't need to use this to get further in the tree. Unfortunately, you got to put that 1 point somewhere, and this is where it is. Now, at the bottom of the tree, there's going to be a few points that might seem a little suspicious, but I'll explain why they work. First, 2 points in Fear Factor is going to reduce the fear required for survivors to be seen by 20%. Now, the reason I'm doing that is not only because I need to get deeper in the tree, but it also allows me to not have to really use any points during the match to upgrade my demonic vision. Moving on to one that I absolutely cannot defend. It's the most useless in the tree. 1 point into Head Start. You start the match with 10% more demonic energy. We're only getting that so we can move on to really important ones like Test of Time. 2 points into this is going to increase the duration of objective events for survivors while you're in that circle by 35%. Now that is huge. And this is important because you're not so much going to want to keep the survivors on that objective longer so much as you are really offsetting the leader abilities that reduce the amount of time that survivors have to spend on the objectives. Because unfortunately, those abilities do stack. So if they're using 2 leaders or 3 leaders, they can really stack that reduction, and you're going to need this to offset it. Next is another really important one. It's 3 points into easy access. This reduces the amount of infernal energy required to possess any evil unit by 15%. Now, why that's important is because Puppeteer Elite's pretty expensive. And if I'm being honest, Puppeteer economy overall is probably the worst of all 3 demons. And you'll see in this build, not only are we doing a lot of power possession, but we are going to be doing a lot of regular possession as well, so it's really important to have these points. Next is a case of points that I'd rather have than not have, if you know what I mean. 2 points into Wicked Fast are going to increase the respawn speed of Infernal Orbs by 20%, and then 2 points into Infernal Revenue are going to increase the amount of Infernal Energy received from Infernal Orbs by 15%. Now, this is not important on objectives, but where it is important is whenever you are chasing down the survivors outside of objectives, because like I said earlier, the Puppeteer economy is a little suspect. And finally, we have the most important points in the tree. Puppet Master Elite, 3 points is going to increase the maximum health gained and damage dealt by possessed evil elite units by 10%, and 3 points into Kandarian Fury. This means the longer that you possess a unit, the more damage you are going to inflict. You're going to get 3% damage a second, and I believe, don't quote me on this because I don't have the numbers, but I believe it tops out at 30% increase. And you guys are going to see in just a little bit why this is so important, because most of the match is going to be spent in a possessed unit. Now, before we talk numbers, let's talk perks. Puppet Master Power Possess, this is going to allow you every 90 seconds to power possess a unit, increasing its damage by 10% and its maximum health by 40%. In addition, your attacks are also going to generate fear on your target when you hit them. Now, earlier on in the game's lifespan, there was a little bit of confusion, and in case anyone's still confused now, how Power Possess exactly works, or rather how Puppet Master works, is you're only getting these bonuses when you Power Possess. So regular possession, you're not getting any of these huge bonuses. And that's caused a lot of people to think, wow, okay, the Puppeteer is not strong at all. Like, they're supposed to be about possession, but they can't even really possess. But they don't take into account how important the Power Possess is. That's where the magic happens. That being said, Puppet Grandmaster 1, 2, and 3, what they're going to do is increase the health and damage of that power possessed unit by 5% each tier. So altogether, you're getting another 15% health and another 15% damage out of your power possessed unit. And next, I'm going to quickly crunch some really important numbers for you guys. Whenever you power possess an elite unit, you're going to be looking at an elite whose health is increased by a whopping 80%. Their damage is going to be increased by 45%, and their balance bar is going to be increased by 15%. And that doesn't factor in Kandarian Fury. So after it's all said and done, if you are possessing this unit for an extended period of time, you can even push that damage up to another 30%. So, I mean, as you can see, it turns your elites into something that is really, really spooky and really difficult for their survivors to deal with, especially if they are a hunter or someone else who is focusing on using ranged attacks. So now what I want to do, guys, is kind of just explain how exactly you're going to be using this build, because you kind of do need to run it in a specific way in order to get the most out of it. And then I also do want to go over what you guys need to look out for, because there are certain things that are super hard counters to this. So the more you're aware of that, the more you can kind of work around them and do your best to obtain a victory in that setting as well. So first, let's talk about what you're going to want to do with your threat level points. There's 3 categories that you really want to focus on. That's Possession, Portal's Elite, and Portal's Boss. And in doing that, you're also going to need to put some points into Demonic Energy just so you can unlock those other trees. But those are the main ones that you really want to focus on. So what exactly does it look like when you have these trees maxed out? Well, starting with Possession, you're going to be looking at a 50% increase to possessed unit health, a 40% increase to possessed unit damage, and a 10% increase to possessed upkeep reduction, which means you're going to be spending less demonic energy staying in a possessed unit. And keep in mind, all these bonuses for this tree and the other 2, they are all going to go on top of everything that we have increased in our tech tree. Moving on to Portal Elite, which unlocks at threat level 5, you're going to want to start putting points into that as soon as you can, and it will give you a 20% portal cost reduction, a 20% portal cooldown reduction, a 25% boost to elite unit damage, and a 25% boost to unit health. And finally, we have Portal Boss, which unlocks at threat level 10, and as soon as you hit 10, you are going to want to put at least 1 point into this so you can unleash Elegos. But remember, you're still going to want to spread your points throughout Possession, Portal Elite, and Portal Boss. What you're looking at for the bonuses when it comes to Portal Boss is a 20% portal cost reduction, a 60% portal cooldown reduction, 20% bonus to boss health, and 20% bonus to boss damage, as well as Elegos becoming immune to stun even if you break that balance bar. So there you have it. You have all the information, but how do you use it? What you're going to want to do is power possess your elite units as often as you possibly can, and the goal is to basically clone as often as you can and thunderstruck as often as you can to really keep the pressure up on survivors. But that doesn't mean to just hide in a corner and spam your thunderstruck. And don't get me wrong, that is fun from time to time, but a good team, and especially a good hunter, is going to be able to dodge that lightning unless you are doing it at an unexpected time, which means you want to intermittently use it throughout your basic attacks. Now, the Elite's basic attack does some good damage, but what is really the star player here is their heavy swing, particularly their running heavy swing, because it has such an awkward timing to it, and it does a good chunk of damage that it's very often you can really catch somebody off guard before they even get a chance to dodge with it because they don't see it coming. And it's no exaggeration that when it comes to melee, more than half your damage is probably going to come from this attack. Now, one thing I do want to stress is whenever you're power possessing your elite unit, don't be afraid to run away and regain your composure. Build that balance bar back up, get out of the fray of things, because once your balance is broken, it will interrupt your attack, and obviously it just leaves you open to be beaten. One important thing to mention though is if your balance is about to be broken, make sure you use the clone ability, because even when your balance breaks, you will still get the clone off. And on top of that, if your thunderstruck animation is more than halfway done, that will trigger as well as soon as your balance bar breaks. So that's a great way to get some damage without giving the survivors a chance to dodge away from it. And now the last thing I really want to touch on is the overall weakness of this build. Every build has a weakness. It's just stuff that you need to be aware of in order to kind of, overcome the odds. When it comes to elites, one thing that they cannot really deal with is heavy melee damage. So if you are against 2 or 3 warriors or a couple warriors and some leaders, particularly Arthur and Henry, you are in for a bad time, especially if they have a high level weapon. It becomes more of a cat and mouse game whenever that's the situation, and it's less about, getting in the fray, going one-on-one, and more about running around corners, throwing off a thunderstruck whenever you can. And that is the one situation where I would say invest at least 1 or 2 points into basic portals. That way you have some cannon fodder out there to keep the survivors occupied and off of you. So ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, that is the build. And I know it turned into kind of like a quick and dirty guide, but I really love this build, and I really wanted to share it with you guys because a lot of people out there are saying that the Puppeteer is not strong, and I just don't believe that. I don't accept it. So I hope you guys try this build out yourself. Let me know what you think. Let me know what your win rate looks like, and let me know how you like to play not only Puppeteer, but the other two demons as well. And please, let's have a discussion about what is to come, because there is so many things that they could add to this game that would just make it even more magical. And of course, guys, as always, I'm TG. If you like what you saw, you know what to do.